We got here around midterm, so we were looking for a school, and all the schools were fully booked. And we were driving past, and my mother saw this group of kids playing, and my mother was like, "Oh, that's a nice uniform, let's go and ask them." And it happened to be a Catholic school. And then the Catholic nun, who was the principal, said, yeah, sure, he can come, but he has to be baptized. He has to become a Catholic. And my parents thought about it a little, and they said, yeah, okay, why not? It's no big deal. I've heard that my grandmother, when she found out, she had a heart attack back in Sri Lanka. But my parents were okay with it, and so I was baptized as a Catholic. I have vague memories of being baptized. They lit a candle, and I kept dropping the candle and nearly set the church on fire and got scolded by my mother quite badly. And I grew up as a Catholic. As from the age of 3 till I left Australia, I grew up as a Catholic. And I'd bring home all these Bibles and these picture Bibles, and I always had an inclination towards religion. I was always the top of the class for religion. I was, the teacher's pet. All my teachers were nuns and priests, so I was their pet. And my mother started getting interested into this, and she was going through my books, and she was asking me about things. And I was, the good little Catholic boy, taught her about the Lord's Prayer, etc. And after that, my mother got a job in Sri Lanka. So my mother and I came to Sri Lanka. My dad continued to work in Australia. So we came to Sri Lanka. And my mother started working, and she met this lady. And she was a Methodist lady. So she was like, "Oh, you're a Catholic, why don't you come to my Methodist church? You might enjoy it." So my mom was like, "Yeah, why not?" So we went from a Catholic church, from a Buddhist temple, to a Catholic church, to a Methodist church. And every once a week I used to be dragged to the church after school, and I was tired, and I used to fall asleep to the playing of the organ music. And we were like that for 1 year. After that, we moved houses, and we met a neighbor who was a full gospel. And full gospel is very similar to Hillsong. And they said, "Why don't you come to our church?" And my mother was like, "Yeah, why not?" So off we went to the full gospel church. And from there onwards, for nearly 3 years, I was a Christian. And I grew up most of my teenage life as a Christian. And I was very religious. I would go to church. I was made the youth leader initially, and then I was made the worship leader, and then after that I was made member of the church board, and then I was appointed a deacon. A deacon, for those of you who don't know, is something, not a pastor, but when the pastor's not there, a deacon can take over and do all the necessary things. So I was made a deacon, and I used to preach in churches a lot. I knew the Bible back to front. I probably read the Bible from back to front maybe 12, 14 times, and I was very religious. And that was during my school life. And after that, I came to Australia for my university. It's 5 years back. 5 years back, I came to Australia, stayed with my dad, and everything was going fine. I went to Hillsong for a while. And one day, I got home after university, and I got a call from my mother. Every day she calls me. I got a call from my mother, and she called me and said, "Look, there's nothing to worry about. I'm sure there's nothing, but I just got a slight rash." It's like, okay, it's a rash. What's there to worry about? Fine. And it sounded odd, but didn't really care too much about it. The next day I got a call, and she's like, "Oh, you know that rash I told you about? It's they found out it was leukemia." Well, I was like, "Well, that's why you told me not to worry." But okay, no big deal. As a Christian, as a full gospel Christian, you're always taught that God heals. He always heals, And to doubt would be not to have faith, and if you don't have faith, God won't heal. So I was like, fine, yeah, okay, that's no problem. We can deal with this. That's all good. And this was February 20th. February 28th, she called me, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm getting treatment. Everything's all right." February 29th, for the first time, I didn't get a call from her. And I was like, okay, something's up here. And I came home, and my father was at home. She usually is at work, and he's like, "Yeah, your mother's in the ICU. I think it's probably best if you could go back. I can't go because I'm working, but you should go back." And okay, I was like, okay, no need to panic. Fine, I'll go back. So I got the next flight, went back to Sri Lanka. My mother was unconscious by the time, and March 9th she passed away. So it's so quick. February 20th, March 9th. Throughout the time that she was ill, I kept telling myself, God will heal. It's all right. I just have to pray a bit more, and I have to read the Bible a bit more. It's no problem. My uncle, who was a doctor, my mother's brother, was an atheist, and he was very close to my mother. And at one point he said, you should maybe understand that she might not get through this, and maybe you should make up your mind for that. And I said, no, that's wrong talk. You have to have faith. When my mother passed away, my uncle managed to get over it actually easier than I did. And I looked at that and I wondered, why was that? And I realized it's because, I kept saying, she will get healed, she'll get healed, she'll get healed, and it was harder for me to deal with that. And that made something snap in me. I was like, religion, no, there's no such thing as religion. This is rubbish. I didn't know if there was a God or not. I hoped there was a God. I honestly hoped there was a God, because then I would have someone to be angry at. Then there was someone I could blame, because if there was no God, who could I blame? So I gave up on religion. I gave up on all religion, and I said, there's a God, good, because I hate you. That was pretty much what I was thinking. And I had a friend, very close friend of mine, almost like a brother to me, and his father had passed away a year or so before my mother, and I was going around preaching my own little philosophy of, I hope there's a God so we can blame him, and if there is a God, he's a utilitarian God. Those of you who don't know what utilitarian is the God who does the greatest good to the greatest number of people but doesn't care about the individual. And so I was having my own little religion that I made up, and I was preaching to everyone I could find. And this friend of mine said, his name was Abdullah, he said, bro, you shouldn't blame God, these things happen. And I heard that, and I looked at him, and I suddenly, my anger that I had towards God, an anonymous God, suddenly got directed towards the God of Islam, because he was Muslim. And I was like, oh, you're going to tell me not to be angry? Right, I'm going to prove you, I'm going to find out everything I can, I'm going to prove to you that you are wasting your time. You're just wasting your time, and it's just ridiculous, and all your prayers and everything. I'm going to find out, and I'm going to prove you, and I'm going to save you from this horrible thing. I felt like a crusader who was going to go and save him from this religion that was making him waste his time. And that started a 2-year research. I came back to Australia, and while I was in uni, every free period I had, every free time I had, I'd go online, I'd go to the Dean's show, I'd look at Dr. Zakir Naik, every sheikh I can find, how they would debate and how Islam was similar to Christianity, how it wasn't similar to Christianity. I looked into Baha'ism, I looked into Zoroastrianism, Judaism, every monotheistic religion I could get my hands on. I even went back into Buddhism and looked into a bit about Buddhism. But I mainly focused on Islam, and I wanted to show that Islam was wrong. And after a year or so of research, I was finding myself slowly going away from the anger and trying to prove that Islam was wrong to more of, this is interesting. There's something interesting about this here. And I was looking more into it, and I was like, oh, this is very, very similar to Christianity. That's quite odd. I mean, I had an idea. My best friend was Muslim, so I knew that Muslims were terrorists. I knew that much. And I knew that, Muslims pray 5 times a day, and a few things like that. But this was a whole new perspective on it. I was interested, but I didn't really want to go all the way out and, say, okay, well, this is a religion you might be able to follow, because I was still anti-religion. For 2 years, I was anti-religion while I was doing the research. And throughout the time when I would talk to Abdullah on the phone, I would, debate with him on Skype. I'd be debating with him, and he'd try and tell me stuff. And most of the time, he'd be like, "Bro, I don't know. You're asking me all these hardcore questions. I don't know." And 2009, December, I went back to Sri Lanka and was staying with him, and as usual, I was debating about Islam. I became a fanatic. I became an agnostic fanatic, if you can get one of those people who just wants to prove something wrong, or just research into everything so that you can always make comparisons and say, well, this is wrong because of this and this is wrong because of this. I actually knew more about Islam, I thought, than Abdullah did at the time. So one day, as per usual, I was debating with him, and as per usual, he gave his answer, which was, bro, stop asking me these things. I don't know the answers to these things. And unlike the other times, I looked at him and suddenly said, you know what? If I die and I go to hell, I'm going to tell God that it's your fault, because you kept saying I don't know. And he's like, whoa, hey, you're going to put it that way? I will see if I can find someone. And I was like, yeah, you do that. So he was like, okay. He thought a bit, and then he got the phone and he called a friend of his and said, there's this friend of mine who's interested in Islam. He said, someone can answer your question, answer this guy's questions. And that friend called another friend, and that friend called a cousin, and the cousin called another friend, and that friend called the Mufti. And the Mufti had said, yeah, okay, I'd love to meet him. Now, we didn't know this, so the night before I was to fly back, I was packing my bags. It was around 7 o'clock, and Abdullah got a call on his phone, and someone we've never met, I don't know how he got the number, he's like, oh, there's a Mufti that wants to meet you. And Abdullah was like, hey, there's some guy on the phone saying that there's a Mufti that wants to meet you, do you want to? And I was like, yeah, why not? Why not? You know, this will be the only chance I get to actually, either say Islam is a real religion, a respectable religion. That's as far as I was willing to go. It's a respectable religion. Or say, no, this is total rubbish. So I was like, yeah, why not? Now, Abdullah's little brother had come over. I was in Colombo at the time, and Abdullah's little brother was living in a place called Martale. He had come all the way to Colombo to spend the last night, with me. He had plans to go to the beach and go for dinner. So I was like, yo, Yusuf, we're going to see a Mufti. I was like, what? You want to see a Mufti? Like, just before you leave, you're going to waste your day on a Mufti? I was like, well, why not? Let's go give it a shot. And he was quite cranky. He's 17 years old. He wanted to go to the beach. And I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's give it a shot. So this guy calls up again, and he was like, okay, Abdullah, you know this mosque? Come at 8 o'clock to this mosque. Well, it was like a drug deal. We did not know who it was. We didn't know where we were going. They just said, come to a mosque. Okay, we'll go to the mosque. So we got on the bus, went. It was around 7:38. We were standing outside. It was dark, and we were waiting for this person. And this car comes up. I can't remember the car, but it was a good posh car. And he drives up, and the three of us are standing there, and the windscreen goes down, and this brother with a big beard, robe, cap, and he looks at Abdullah and says, you Abdullah? I was like, yeah, get in. And I was like, this is not a good idea. This is not a good idea. I looked at Abdullah, and Abdullah was like, what can we do? We don't know where we get in. So we got in, Yusuf and me in the back, Abdullah got in the front. And this brother, through the mirror, he looked at me, and I smiled, no smile. And I was like, through my mind, I was running through, okay, maybe I should just open the door and jump out, because this is gonna get scary. And so he was talking with Abdullah during this time, how usually in Sri Lanka, Muslims, when they meet, they always, try and find out how they're related to each other. So this, and my uncle's married to him, and so on and so forth. And I was sitting at the back. Yusuf was fuming. He wasn't even looking at me. And then at one point, the brother was driving and looked in the mirror, and the first question he asked me was, so what religion are you? I said, well, I was Christian, and I'm sort of looking into Islam. And that got him speaking. He was so passionate. He went on and on and on and on. And now, sitting here, I can say he was passionate. Back then, I was like, oh my God, this guy's a fanatic. And that's it. I got caught to a fanatic, and he's going to take me somewhere where I don't want to go. And my heart was racing at this point. And I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. Now, he wasn't the Mufti. He was a guy who was going to take us to the Mufti. We had no idea where we were going. So this brother drove us and went to another mosque. It was around 9 o'clock. And he's like, I'm not going to be taken to Mufti, but another brother's going to take to Mufti. And I was like, great. So now we had no idea where we had really no idea where we were. We got down, it was a small street, there was a mosque, and there was, I don't know, around 100, 150 brothers walking around, all of them, beards. They were all like wearing uniforms, and it was only me, Abdullah, and Yusuf were clean shaven. And I was like, something's up here. You don't find Christians in churches at 9 o'clock. Something's up here for these people to be here at 9 o'clock. I always thought people who said Muslims were terrorists were idiots. Now all these conspiracy theories are running through my head, and I'm starting to think George Bush might be right here. It was not. It was. I didn't know where we were, and I couldn't go anywhere. We didn't know where we were. There was no taxis. There's nothing at the time. So Abdullah and Yusuf were like, okay, bro, it's Isha time. We'll go and pray. I had no idea about Isha time or what time. I was like, what? Seriously? Now you want to pray? You want to leave me out here with these guys and go and pray? And they're like, yeah, we'll pray and come. And so they went in, and I was standing there amongst these people, and you could probably imagine how I'm feeling. They're all wearing the dishtasha, like me, white beards. They were talking, and I'm sure they were talking about like stuff that unrelated. But in my head, it was all about me. Oh my God, they're gonna kidnap me. This is all planned out. And then Abdullah and Yusuf prayed, and they came out, and this brother who brought us introduced me to another brother. Same look, beard, dishtasha, cap and all. And he said, this brother's going to take you to see the Mufti. And I was like, okay, that's all right. And so we were walking towards the van. And then the first brother who brought me shouted out to the other brother, "Brother, this is a war." I just froze. I froze and I looked at Abdullah and I was like, what's a war? What are they talking about? What's going on here? And we were like, I think by this stage even Abdullah and Yusuf were like starting to feel a bit awkward. Like, what's going on? And we walked and we continued walking towards the van, and there it was a van. Now, those of you who know anything about Sri Lanka, the white van is the boogeyman. That's how you scare little kids. You don't get into the white van. You get into the white van, you never come out again. That sort of stories. So there was a white van there, and I was like, this is not good. This is not going to end well. This is not going to end well. And we walked in, and the brother opened the door, and inside there was 3 other brothers. Same thing, beard, dishdasha, and cap. And I was sure, that this was the end of it. And we got in, and then the brother was like, "Oh yeah, brother, it's just 20 minutes. The Mufti is just 20 minutes away." And we drove for nearly 45 minutes, going and going and going. We had no idea where we were. By this stage, I wasn't sure if I was going to see a Muslim Mufti or the Muslim Mafia. I was thinking, what's going on here? We went off from the main road to a side road, from the side road to another side road. And we kept going and going and going. And then we came at around 11 o'clock, I think. And we stopped outside. Now, before we came to all this dilemma, my friend was like, we're going to see a Mufti, and you can't go and debate with him about stupid things. You're going to make a fool of yourself, and you're going to embarrass me. Why don't you write something? Write the questions you had down. I was like, okay, good idea. So I sat down and I wrote 11 questions that I was sure that no one could answer. During the time I was researching into Islam, I would ask these, every Muslim that I came across these 11 questions, and most Muslims were not able to answer them. Unfortunately, most of the Muslim brothers that I met were what I'd call parrot Muslims. They're trained to say something. So whenever I go up to a brother and I'd say, "Brother, what's about, what is it about this Kaaba?" They'd be like, "No, brother, we're not terrorists." I know you're not terrorists. I didn't ask you about terrorism. I asked you about, no, we're not. We don't harm women. I know, that's not my point. So at this stage, I was thinking every Muslim's going to know this answer. So I had 11 questions that I was sure, this is going to, prove that Islam is wrong for good. So we got to the house with that paper in my hand with 11 questions. And we knocked on the door, no answer, knocked on the door again. And the gate opened, and this short little man comes out, little beard, fairly little beard, and no hair at all. He was wearing trousers and a t-shirt. And I actually looked down, and he was one of the nicest people, mashallah, that I've ever met. He introduced us, he told us to come in, he invited us into the house. It was 11 o'clock in the night. So me, Yusuf, Abdullah, the brother who brought us, 3 other brothers who I never got the name, walked in. And this Mufti was saying, he talked to me, he said, he introduced himself, and he addressed me as son. I was like, wow, okay, this is weird, totally out of character for what I've seen. And so he's like, you have some questions, why don't you ask me? And I was like, oh, please don't get offended, I don't want to offend you, but some of these questions, I was like, no, I won't get offended, I promise, just ask me what you have. And I started asking him one question, and then he gave me an answer to that. And then he went inside and he brought a Bible. That surprised me. I didn't think any Muslim would have a Bible. He had a Bible, and he knew the Bible. He could read it from back to front. He knew the Bible. When I said something from the Bible, he'd flip it and it's like, oh, I know what you're talking about. We're talking about Corinthians here and there. That impressed me. So I was like, okay, that's impressive. So I've actually seen a Muslim who's not very scary. That's good news. So they are out there. So he was answering a few questions, and then from 11 o'clock till 1:30 in the morning, we were talking about questions, we were debating, we were going backwards and forwards. And by 1:30, I was exhausted, he was exhausted. By this time, Yusuf was talking to me, because he actually got interested in the discussion as well. And 1:30, and after we finished, I had most of my questions answered. And I was quite surprised. I was like, okay, now I can't hide behind these questions. Those were rock solid questions that I thought I had, things that no one were able to answer. And I was thinking, what do I do now? Now the brother who brought me, I knew where he was going. He started up by saying, you know, Mufti, Shan has learnt a lot from you. I think it's time now. My Christian mind was working. I was like, I know where he's going. He's trying to seal the deal. He's going to be like, okay, it's time to say the Shahada, another Muslim brother, move along, you know, that sort of conveyor belt sort of thing. And I was already getting ready to say, no way. Sorry, yes, I learnt a lot, but I'm not saying the Shahada. But before I could say that, the Mufti jumped in and said, no. You know, he's learnt a lot, I've learnt a lot, we had a good discussion. Give him some time, let him think. And that was another surprise. I wasn't used to that. I was used to sealing the deal sort of thing. And I was like, oh, okay, that's impressive. And this brother gave me, this Mufti gave me the choice to volume 1 and volume 2 of Ahmed Dida. He said, you can keep it. So I had the 2 books, and all the way home I was thinking about it, got down, it was around 3 in the morning and we got back home. I packed my bags, next day was the flight, so I got on the plane. And I was reading the book on the plane, I was reading the book choice, and my head was just thinking, and I was thinking about all the research that I've done, and started, you know, realizing a few things. You know, I can give you an example of, as a Christian, there's a part where one of the disciples of Jesus comes and says, good teacher, addresses him as good teacher, and he says, why do you call me good? Now as a Christian, and from what I've been always taught, if someone asked me, why do you call me good, I would have said, oh, well, he's saying that he's God here, you know, by saying, why do you call me good, he's sort of being sarcastic and pointing to the fact that I am good, therefore I'm God. But because I was agnostic, I actually got rid of all that. I got rid of all these ideas that I had taught, and I had a sort of a clean slate. And so during my research, I realized that there's a different way of looking at it. He might actually be saying, why are you calling me good? Only God is good, I'm not God. And that sort of makes sense. So all these things that I learned from the research was running through my head on my flight back. And then I got back to Australia and I decided, okay, Islam is quite respectable. It's a respectable religion. There might be a few things I can take from this. So I had started off, you know, fighting against religion, and now without even me realizing, I was starting to take bits and pieces from Islam and sort of incorporating, and I had slowly, without me knowing, actually started going back towards God. But I wasn't a Muslim at the time, and I would have fought anyone tooth and nail who said I was a Muslim. I was not a Muslim, and I'm not saying the Shahada. That was quite clear. So I thought, okay, what am I going to take from Islam? It's a good religion, it's respectable, and I started off with the Salat. So okay, I'll look at the Salat, I'll find out the translations for it. And if it's good, and if I believe it, and if everything's fine, I'll pray the way Muslims pray. So I looked at it, went through the list, tick, yeah, I like that bit, tick, I can do that bit, yeah, that's fine. The sujood, having the knee like that was a bit difficult for me, but okay, I'll somehow manage that, tick, tick. And then I said, okay, I can do the Salah. I believe in what it says, I'll do that. And the first day back, I went to work. And at this point, I was having, you know, I was starting to like Islam. Anyone who said something about Islam, I'd get annoyed. I wasn't Muslim, but I would, you know, I had an affection towards Islam. And first day back, I went to work, and there was an Algerian security guard there. He was one of the people that I always asked about, you know, about Islam and everything. So he said, how was your holiday? And I was like, oh, it was good. I had a great time. I met this Mufti. And I was like, oh, really? What happened with that? And I was like, oh, well, I met the Mufti, and he answered a few of my questions. And he was like, oh, mashallah, that's great. So what's your situation? Where are you at now? And I was like, first of all, I'm not a Muslim, and I'm not said the Shahada, and I won't be saying the Shahada, but there's a lot of things that I like and I believe in Islam, and I believe the Salat, and I believe everything in the Salat. He says, stopped, and he looked at me. He's like, so you say the Salat? I was like, yeah. Do you know what the meaning of it? I was like, yeah, of course. I looked at the translation. I wouldn't say it if I don't know the meaning. Like, but brother, every time you say the Salah, you say the Shahada. I stared at him for a while. Now what do I do? And I thought, and I was like, well, I do believe everything. I do believe that there is only one God, and I do believe that the Prophet Muhammad was the messenger. Now what do I do? I didn't have the questions to hide behind. I didn't have the anger anymore. What do I do? And I looked at him and I smiled, and I was like, yeah. And I just sort of walked away. And then I got home that day, and I sat in bed, and I was thinking. and thinking. I think I spent nearly 1.5 hours in the same position. I hadn't even taken my clothes off from work. And it was tough. Trust me, I have so much respect for reverts now. It is very tough. For all these years, for 18, 19 years, you grow up thinking one way, and and suddenly you realize that what you thought was right is wrong, and what was wrong is right. And overnight, the change is tough. I knew what the truth was. I knew what I believed in, but to take that one step was the hardest. For me, becoming a Muslim was not one of those joy to the world, I'm a Muslim things. It was more like, oh my God, I'm a Muslim. It was one of those reversions. But I sat there and I thought, you know what, I just have to be brave enough to say it. I have to be brave enough to say it, because if I don't, I'm just going to have to act as if everything I learned to this point was false, and it wasn't. I can't say this. And I sat there and I said the Shahada for the first time. I said, Ashhadu anna la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. And I said it by myself on the bed. And then I sent a text message to Abdullah saying, you know what, I said the Shahada. And I was thinking about it the whole night. And then, of course, then came all the firsts. The first time I prayed after saying the Shahada, I knew the prayers. I learned the translation, but I didn't know it off by heart. So what I did, I went on YouTube, downloaded it, put it onto my MP3, put the earphones on, and I'd start praying like that. I was in a house with non-Muslims, some friends of mine, and I was sharing a room. So every time I had to pray, I had to go to the balcony. So I put the earphones on and I go to the balcony to pray. The first time I was praying, I had just done sujood and I was coming up and boom, on the back of my head. My friend had come in and whacked me on the head. My earphones went flying, and he's like, yo dude, what are you doing? Yoga? And he had no idea. I mean, I had earphones on. He thought I was listening to music and doing yoga. And I just looked at him. I didn't know how to respond. I was just staring at him. And then my roommate came running and he dragged him out and he closed the door. My roommate by that time knew, and so I just continued praying, and in the background I can hear whispering, and then, oh my God, what, Shan? And then a few swear words as well, and then I was like, oh goodness, this is going to turn out bad. I don't know, what am I going to do? So I continued praying, and I could hear this massive commotion. The friend had gone and told another friend, and then I could hear my name being screamed out. And I made dawah saying, okay, make this easy for me. So I opened the door and I went down, and everyone was like, yo, Muslim? And I was like, yeah, I am. And I think that was probably the first time that I actually managed to get it out and say, yeah, I am Muslim. And I said I was Muslim, and that was the first time I said the Salat, the first time I went to Jummah. That night I called up a friend of mine, and I said, dude, I'm coming to Jummah. I was like, what? You coming to Jummah? I was like, yeah, I'm coming to Jummah. I was like, why? He was like, and then I told him, I said the Shahada, and he was like, okay. So I went to the university Musalla, and my friend came out. He gave me a 5-minute crash course in Jummah prayer. Had no idea what was happening. I went in and standing next to these brothers, and one of the brothers, I was standing a little forward. So one of these brothers looked at my feet and pushed me slightly back, and I kept looking at my feet. I was like, what, do I have dirt on my feet? Why are you pushing me? And I had no idea what was going on. And so the Jummah started, and I started praying. I didn't pray, I just pretty much followed what everyone else was doing. I had no idea what was going on. And then, of course, came first Ramadan. This was, so I said the Shahada, I think, in March. It's now 1 year. And then came the first Ramadan, and that was an experience. You hear, ring, ring, brother, tomorrow's Ramadan, start fasting. Ring, ring, brother, tomorrow's not Ramadan, don't fast, moon hasn't been sighted. And backwards and forwards, and all these messages, all these Muslim brothers I met, messages coming in, tomorrow's Ramadan, fast, don't fast, yalla brother, fast. And that was an experience, mashallah. And then, of course, after that, I went to Sri Lanka again for the first time since I said Shahada. And it was awesome because I got to pray with Abdullah and Yusuf for the first time, which I always saw them pray but never actually prayed with them. And that was good, and I went to Jummah in Sri Lanka. And it's been 1 year now, and it's been a bit of a journey. And I managed to go and meet the Mufti again, And one of the things he said was like, that's brilliant. He heard my story, and after what happened after I left him, he was like, mashallah, brother, it's time to marry now. What? That's a bit fast. And he was like, no, maybe in a few years, but start thinking about it. So, but and that's how I went from Buddhism to Catholic to Methodist, and then to agnostic, and mashallah now to Islam. Is there any questions in regard? Usually I get a lot of questions on something that I left out.
Takbir! Takbir! Takbir!
There's an interesting story that you named Shan.
Well, yeah. One of the issues, like most of my family, they don't know that I'm Muslim. My dad knows that I'm looking into Islam and that I'm interested in. He probably knows that I am practicing Islam. He doesn't really ask me straightforward. One of the problems that I had was when I said the Shahada, and one of my friends was like, that's awesome, so now you're a Muslim, so what's your new name? So what? My new name? He's like, yeah brother, you need a new name now. And I was like, great, now what am I going to do? If I change my name, it's going to be, the whole hell's going to let loose, my family's going to disown me, it's going to be horrible. And I was thinking about this, and one of my friends was like, oh wait, isn't Shan a Muslim name? So I looked into this and I found out Shan was a Muslim name. And how it happened was I wasn't actually supposed to be named Shan, I was supposed to be named Shane, S-H-A-N-E. And when my father went to the registration place, the lady who was doing the registration forgot to put an E, put S-H-A-N. And so my father brought back the birth certificate, and my mother was like, Shan, that's not bad, leave it. So, and I didn't have to change my name, mashallah, so it's been Shan.
Brother, if the questions aren't too long, I don't want to hold a comprehensive list, but some of those other questions, can you give us an idea?
I wish, actually Abdullah had kept the paper with him as a souvenir, so this time when I went back it was in his drawer. One of the questions I had was about the Tawrat and the Torah, the Old Testament, according to Christians. It doesn't mention the Kaaba. The Kaaba, it records the life of Abraham and everything, but it doesn't record one of the greatest points in Abraham's life, alayhi salam, of actually building the Kaaba. So that was one of the questions. Where did this Kaaba all of a sudden pop up from? Why isn't it in the Tawrat if Abraham did actually build it? That was one of the questions that I had, and I asked a lot of Muslims, and most Muslims weren't able to answer it. And the Mufti, the answer he gave for that question was that he said the Kaaba was built with Ishmael, his son Ishmael. The Tawrat was written by Isaac and his descendants. So it's quite understandable why the Kaaba wasn't referred into it. It might be that they left it out purposely, it might be that they didn't even know about it. And that's fair enough, that makes a lot of sense. So that was one of the questions. There was 11 questions. Unfortunately, I can't remember off the top of my head all 11.
How was your father treating you when you declared Islam?
My parents, both my mother and my father, were very, very liberal. So my father I never went up to him and said, I'm Muslim. I never told him that, but obviously when he walks and he sees, all the Qurans next to my bed and all the Islamic books, and he's taken it quite well, and he knows I'm looking into it. I've had long discussions about Islam and the Prophet with him, and every time something about Muslims goes on TV, he comes running up and, oh, look, Channel 8, they're showing about Muslims, and so he's actually taken it fairly well. My extended family, my aunts, grandmother, and them, that will be another story, and I haven't got there yet, so I'll let you know when I find out what's going to happen there. Anything else?
Just interesting to know, you said you were from Sri Lanka. Obviously, there are Muslims in Sri Lanka, I've been there myself. You didn't know much about Islam because the fact that they are in the minority and live within the background, or for your, pardon the word, but ignorance of Islam at that time, why was that the case?
Well, exactly. My best friend was Muslim. I should have probably known more about it. But as a Sri Lankan, and especially as a Sinhalese Sri Lankans, part of the majority, you tend to think that you already know about other religions. That was the case with me. I knew that Muslims prayed 5 times a day, I knew that Muslims go on a thing called Hajj. I knew they wore robes and grew beards and had a cap, and I thought that was enough. I thought, well, I know about Islam. There you go. And that was probably that's why I didn't know about Islam as much as I should have. But being Sri Lankan, it's a bit different to what you get in Australia and all the other Western countries. Not many Sri Lankans would think a Muslim is a terrorist. They have other deals with, most being Buddhists, they say that, killing, slaughtering the cow is, that's horrible, they're all butchers, and that's the impression they have in Sri Lanka. But most Sri Lankans would not think of Muslims as terrorists. Yeah. That's a bit different to how it is in the Western countries.
I was saying that you went through a few religions. Do you think that you were sort of always looking for the truth?
Yeah.
Going from one to the other, like something new always interested you more?
Yeah, definitely. It was, even as a child, my grandma used to say that when I was Buddhist, I used to love going to the temple. As a Catholic, I was top of the class when it came to religious studies. I was always searching, and I always had this inclination towards something bigger than myself, something known as God. And that was something that when I decided that I'm going to be agnostic and that I'm going to have an anger towards God, I actually felt the loss, the loss that I never felt before. I actually felt sad. It was a mixture of anger and sadness. Sadness, of course, that my mother passed away, but more of a sadness that I also felt like I lost God. And it was something that I sort of inflicted on myself, I suppose. But like I said, the first year of research was more of proving it wrong. But then after the first year, the second year of it was more of I need something. I need to find out, who is this God? Who is he really? Is he really utilitarian? Is he really there? And it sort of became more of something for myself afterwards.
SubhanAllah, you had some
Anything else?
You're saying about the salah, you used to do salah before you took the shahada. How did you feel in Islam? Obviously, having been a person of different religious persuasions in the past, you could have chosen any other prayer, Lord's Prayer or whatever. But you obviously chose to do the salah because Mufti, or you researched yourself. Before you became a Muslim, how did you feel in Islam? Did it really, draw you towards Allah, or what was your feeling?
Yeah, it did. That's why I looked into Salah. I looked into each of the bits. The first part of it, and this is the At-Tahiyatu bit, and I ticked it off pretty much. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. I like that. That really, I can feel it in my heart. That's the best I can explain it. And it really drew me. It was actually the Salah that more than anything else drew me to Allah. Even so since I'm being recorded, I probably should be careful when I say this, but as a Christian, that was one thing that I felt missing, the fact of prayer in an organized form. I had always believed that humans were very methodical creatures. We like doing things in procedures, one after another, and then one way, and then the next, and the rakats and all. And as a Christian, I sort of missed that. As Catholics, you do have that bit, but as a Christian, full gospel Christian from Hillsong, you could pray any way you like. You could pray standing, seated, on your head if you like. And I always found that wasn't very attractive to me. And in Islam, that was the main thing that attracted me. The fact that it's almost like meditation. You meditate on God, and yeah.
Just some words of advice to brothers and sisters who like to give da'wah, just their approach, what they recommend to brothers and sisters. And they come to non-Muslims and approach them.
That's a good question. Listen to them first. That was an issue that I always had. When I ask a question, I'd like I said, I'd ask them one thing, but they would always be on the defensive. As soon as I say something, they're like, "No, brother, we're not terrorists." So, okay, I'm not saying you're terrorists. No, brother, we don't harm women. That's not what I'm saying. So first listen to what they have to say. Really find out, where are they really searching for God? What position are they in? And if someone had actually sat down and listened and said, okay, tell me what you want to say, and then I'll listen to them, I'll give you the answer the best I can. I would have probably been drawn towards Islam far sooner, God willing, but so that would probably be the first thing I'd say, is listen to to a non-Muslim and listen to what they have to say. And probably another question, a few questions that I had was about pork. Now, this might be different to different people. Because I was looking at it from a religious, as a Christian, as a former Christian, I had a religious knowledge. So when I tell people about why don't you eat pork, I would get all these scientific answers about why you don't eat pork, and that's fine. That's good for some people. But for me, instead of getting all that, if a Muslim had actually said, "I don't eat pork because my God told me not to eat pork," I would have been more impressed. I would have been, that makes sense. And then, of course, on the side part, you can say, well, because of these factors. But that's not what I got. I always got these scientific reasons why you shouldn't eat pork. And for every 100 scientific reasons they gave me, I could have, if I really wanted to, give another 100 scientific reasons why you should. Because I was a person like that. It really depends on what sort of person you're talking to. I was more of an aggressive person, more debating and stuff. Whereas if that brother had said, "I don't eat pork because my God said you shouldn't eat pork," there's nothing I can say. What do I say to that?
But as a Christian, do you eat pork?
As a Christian, I ate pork. Yes. Well, I know a lot of Christians didn't. My family did. I did. Yeah, I did eat pork.
What do you recommend for I know a revert, but he believes in Islam, this and that, but he doesn't really go to the mosque or, you know what I mean? Now that you're a revert too, there's something that,
Did he revert recently?
Probably say 5 months ago.
Yeah. For me, as a revert, everything was exciting. I couldn't wait for the next prayer because it was exciting. It was something new, and it was an adventure pretty much. That's the best way I can describe it. I had to pray. I had to go to the balcony to pray, and I had to pray in the garden so that I wouldn't disturb other people. And for this brother, I'm sure when you first say, I think any real revert, when they say the Shahada and they do believe in what they say, it's always exciting because you're changing your life. Not only your life, you're changing your eternity for yourself. And I'd probably say, just remind that brother about that. Remind him that where he started off and how it felt when he first said the Shahada, and the excitement that you felt that you're actually serving one true God. Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
You said you did a lot of research into the deen. What did you find was the most effective and formal research or resource?
I watched the Deen Show a lot. When I was researching. But it really depends on what sort of stand. Like from where I was doing a comparison of Islam to all the other religions that I knew of. So because of that, I'd look at a lot of debates with Dr. Zakir Naik and other Christian scholars and etc. And that's the sort of area that I looked into. But the Deen Show is a pretty good place to start because they're very open, should I say, especially to a non-Muslim. It's not very scary to watch a clip from the Deen Show.
Just to learn from your experience, for us to draw something from your life. Like, what was the most interactive thing for you to when you went through different sources and you had experiences with all these sources? Which was the most interactive thing for you to learn Islam before you decided to go?
You mean during my research?
Yeah.
I was always impressed when a Muslim brother would come up to me and say, when they realized that I was interested and they actually took the time out. That would probably get my attention more than anything that I did for myself. So I guess that really shows how important dawah is, because I can go and research for myself. But whenever a Muslim brother comes up to me and says, "Oh, brother, you have questions?" Even if it's not the perfect way, he would always impress me because he really cares. He's taking his time out to talk to me. So I guess that was the best way. Any other questions, brothers? Yeah, yes, brother. Sorry? Is there meaning to Shan? I've been told that it means pride, but not in the sense of pride in the Western sense. I think it's more regal, and it's more of a, I don't know if there's any Pakistan brothers here, can you correct me, I've been told it's more Pakistan based or something Mughal based. Not exactly sure. Yes.
Just a quick one. Effective gospel and Hindu acts of worship, is it a similar script or scripture that, or is it a totally different script?
Do you mean Chris?
Because you did mention that he had experience from Hindu to gospel to other beliefs such as belief.
Buddhism is very different to Christianity. Buddhism, I would say, is more of a philosophy. From what I knew about Buddhism, I'm not a scholar on Buddhism or anything, but from what I've learned from Buddhism is that Buddha never addressed the fact of God or divinity. It was more, based on it being a philosophy. And Buddha was from a Hindu background. He never really denounced Hinduism when he became a monk. So it's very different. And Buddhism being very based on Hinduism is a very polytheistic religion. If you do make it into a religion, it becomes a very polytheistic religion. They do believe in all the Hindu gods. According to them, there's 33 million Hindu gods. There's a question from a sister. Does pork taste delicious? Did you love it or not? Did you love it or not like it? How do I answer? I don't miss it. I don't miss pork at all. I didn't necessarily love pork. I suppose it's the way you cook it. I never liked pork curry or anything. No, I didn't like that. Bacon I used to like, but I don't miss it. And giving up pork is not a big deal for me at all. So, any other questions? Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Should I just off this? Yeah.
Jazakallah khair.